Hi, I'm Gilda Scarfe. I'm the CEO and founder of Positive Action UK. I'm hoping that people will have a better insight about where education is heading at the moment. We all know that we live in a very volatile environment and very challenging, and education hasn't changed much in the last 100 years, so to speak. It's still very much teacher-centered. And I think I would like to raise more awareness about how to embed the 21st century skills within the school climate, not necessarily as a curriculum, because when you put something standing alone, it's not really as impactful as when you put it as a whole school climate. So I think it is important that teachers and school leaders look at research and find out the best evidence-based practices they can implement in their classroom and in their school. There are so many education consultancy at the moment who are trying to make this sort of be a small cog in a wheel to change the face of education. So yeah, I would say first port of call is go to education consultancy, go to universities who are looking on evaluating 21st century skills or well-being or even pedagogical skills. I would say they are the first port of call because they will have the experience, and ultimately, however much you think as a teacher that you know, it's a vast world out there, and translating research into practice is always a little bit difficult. So I will say upskill the teachers first, so get the right advice from the right university or education consultancy. We keep hearing about digitalization, automation, AI in everywhere, in every walks of life. And I think it's important to remember that's not going to be tomorrow. But in the same time, the skills we embed our students in today's world, they're going to be very helpful for tomorrow's world. So we do prepare them for the future, but it's more about looking at learning how to communicate, learning how to solve problems, looking at how to create connectedness between us humans, because machines might replace certain things, but they will not replace the connection and the relationship between people. But in the same time, I would say using the science of well-being to level your confidence, your emotional intelligence, and looking at becoming more and more accountable for your own actions. I think we're living too much in a society where the blame is there. And it's never your fault. So I think we need to empower the students to become the architects of their own success and their own well-being. I think there are so many avenues or frameworks out there to learn from, but in the same time, one of the greatest difficulty in education is that one size fits all. So I will always urge people to be very careful about what you implement in your school, taking off the shelf something, even just because somewhere worked for 10 years or 15 years doesn't necessarily what's going to work in your school. So look to work with your teachers, make them part of the solution, look at frameworks and ideas, but look at your aim, a vision, and create your own framework, and then bring the specialists in to upskill. About 6 years ago when I started my company, I thought after 2 years I don't think I can create change, and I realized that the change can be created with one thought, and you only have to look at Greta. You know, one person, one child has made a difference. So I might not get there, but I think in collaboration and partnership with other people, looking at changing the face of education, and for me it's empowering students with skills outside the school. And although knowledge is absolutely vital and is important, but having a child who is very good at maths or chemistry or biology, but not being able to articulate what he knows, connecting with that, working in teams, that's going to be the future. So more and more we see that students come out of university with great degrees and not being able to apply that in real life. So we need to concentrate on real life skills in education. read, and more read. Because of research is so important, we're trying, as psychologists, we're trying to close that gap between researcher and practitioners, because I can understand how difficult it is to read research and put it in practice. It doesn't always make sense because you're not trained to read that way. But I think the steps is looking at exchanging best practices with other schools. If bring other people, attend conferences like Dubai 2020. For me, Dubai 2020 and 2019 has been an incredible platform to put my voice out there, and you realize that people are listening. If it's really done in the right way, and this is what the beautiful thing about GESS Dubai is, the way how you connect people from speaking about the same topic but with different angles. So yeah, just go out there, look at best practices, talk to other teachers, talk to other consultancy. It doesn't have to be very expensive, but at least gives you an idea about where you're going to go to create that change for your school. You have to start with the basics, and I think I'm going to go right to the basics of understanding what you feel. And for me, my research the last 5 years has been incredibly powerful, because I started with the well-being, and I realized that well-being is so wide, so we need to break it down. So when you have a child who understands how it feels, if he can label an emotion, then he can regulate. And after that, he needs to find what his personal brand identity. Once you realize what kind of person you are, what you made, what is your mix, so to speak, children have much more of an ability to go and find the meaning and purpose into education, into learning. It's not very easy though, because people assume that well-being or emotional states or emotional agility, it's something which you learn and you learn once. This is grafting. You have to work at it every day, and you know that well-being, being well, is not something you wake up and you have to make a decision first of all, and then you need to keep working at it. And I think with the students, we don't give them enough control over their own feelings. We always tell them how to feel, when to feel, and I think just taking a step back as educators and as parents is very important, because that's how you create that kind of change and consistency in the kids being courageous to say, you know, I feel sad today, but it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's, you know, it's not something, it's not a state of mind which I'm going to have for 10 years. It's just something I feel today. So learning how to cope with that kind of emotion, I think, is the first step for implementing little things which create a long-lasting change. This is why I think initially when I started my research, I started looking at students, and I realized I can't do that. I have to start with the teachers. We've got attrition in teaching. The teachers have got demotivated. They haven't got the same oomph about, because they feel like it's not going nowhere. So we need to empower them, and we need to upskill them, and we need to give them the power to understand if little Jim in a corner is not engaged in a classroom, why is that? Without actually using punitive measures. We used to do that a lot in schools. You know, you go out, you know, you're disruptive in a class. But if you think about having a teacher who has some emotional intelligence awareness, they will pick up on that child, and they will take a minute to know how to approach him. So that's why I think it's important, the upskilling of the teachers in all the 21st century skills. You start with the teachers, and then you will see that it permeates down to the students and to the other staff. But also it changes you as a person. Mm-hmm. And for me, I think that's the journey where teachers should be more aware, especially the ones who are very reluctant to start something like this, because they think, oh, I don't believe in that. You know, I'm a maths teacher. Why should I do emotional intelligence and all the other skills you want me to do in a classroom, because I'm here to teach maths? But it will transform you as a teacher. It will make you a little bit more regulated, and you'll give you a platform to connect with your students in a better way. I am a little bit concerned that it's becoming another fad. You know, we had mindfulness about 2 or 3 years ago. The schools are like, oh my God, let's have mindfulness, and it's wonderful and it's useful. But we need to pace ourselves. You can't, because well-being is so dynamic as well. What you feel today, you're not going to feel tomorrow. And you might feel motivated today, but not tomorrow. So you need to learn how to create micro habits. You need to know what actually define well-being for yourself. Because it's so wide, everybody's perception about well-being about themselves is very different. But in order to do that, you need to have the basic understanding of the science of well-being, besides eating well, sleeping well, learning how to have that work-life balance, which we're not very good at it, really. Because sometimes when you love what you do, and I love what I do, I find myself going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, waking up at 4, because I have this sense of urgency to try to fix something or to try to learn something more. And yeah, so it's not conducive to my well-being because I get burnt out, and then everything suffers around you. So yeah, so you did need to employ a little bit more kind of self-awareness, and you need to be quite authentic about it and be honest about it, because we're not honest with ourselves. We kind of put it aside, we kind of just push it down, and the reality is when you push your emotions down, whatever that is, it will come up again later and you'll never fix the problem. So by just creating that consistency is going to be very helpful. Students or young people, the best way they learn is by role modeling. Now, if it's you as a parent, and I am a parent and I know how stressful it can be. You come from work, you had a terrible day at work, you have to come home to cook and to feed the family, and then you're supposed to do some little small talk with your child, and you don't have the energy anymore, and we react. Now, the moment we react, the child gets that cue from you. And I know it's very difficult, but if you just a little bit employ some ways of raising that at a conscious level, just before you make that step, before you react, thinking, okay, it's better to be quiet than say nothing, which could be something which is quite detrimental to the child. And because we're not modeling very well, even in a classroom, you know, I'm sure I'm going to be a little bit vilified for this, but I've been to a couple of schools where I spoke to teachers where they already write off a child because, oh, no, I know him, that's what he does. Now, we can't lose kids like that because they are the ones who are potentially going to a state of depression or go really rebelling and making some crazy decisions. So yeah, role modeling and being ourselves as much as in touch with what we feel. And also, if we do feel down, we can actually show a little bit of vulnerability, because don't underestimate the kids. They are very good at picking up vibes from you. So they do see that if you're tired, if you're angry, if you're upset. But if you react, they will not be as compassionate towards you. But if you kind of say, look, I'm not feeling very, very well at the moment, could you give me some time? So these little things, these little triggers are very powerful things for young people especially. And especially when you go to adolescence, that's a completely different. You need to learn how to give children space as well. Because we want something to be fixed now, in a classroom or at home. Sometimes their moods are not there, and you can create more damage than just taking a step back for a minute and let it sizzle down a little bit, and then just reconnect with the child at a time. Yes, it is, and you know, we still live in a very in a society where everything is compared, thriving for perfection. And I work with kids where they want to be the best there is. There is nothing wrong with doing that, but it's the way how they do it. There is that sense of urgency, like I said, about what I like to do, where they want continuously to be better and better and better. The reality is, if you ask them, what do you want to achieve? And they said, well, I want to get A-star in maths. When they get to the A-star in maths, they don't even take the time to kind of give themselves a pat in the back to say, wow, I've done very well. So they move to the next one. So it's becoming a mirage. You know, you're continuously chasing something. Every time you get it, you move on to the next one. And then what happens inside yourself, it's the lack of an achievement. You don't achieve something because every time you reach a goal point, you kind of think, okay, what's next? What's next? So we need to learn to teach our children to be satisfied and learn how to flourish in that moment, gratification, you know, for what they have achieved. Yes, and then they can move on, but not at the sense of urgency they normally do. trust me,
yeah.
I'm a parent and I know very well. And you know, my son sometimes says, well, you keep preaching these things, but you kind of not doing it. You know, if I come up with a bad grade at home, you kind of think, well, what happened? And I realized that I am preaching because, yes, I don't agree with grades. But we live in a society where my son, to go to the university he wants to go to, he needs the grades. So this is where the toxic circle in education is. We keep talking about it, but we're not implementing enough because it takes time. We want something to change instantaneously. It's not going to happen. And pigeonholing or labeling children, it's one of the most dangerous ways of doing it. Even as a parent, you know, sometimes we think, oh, my son is lazy. Well, you put that label on that child is continued. He's not going to change, because why would he change? Some kids might say, well, I'll prove you wrong, but in general, about 80% they will say, fine, I'm lazy, so what? So to create a different behavior, you need to create a safe environment where they can be safe, feel safe to tell you, I do not want to do my bed today, or it's not because I'm lazy, I just don't feel today, but I will do it tomorrow. So they always have something. It's like a journey. It's not just creating a moment in time where you deal with it now and that's it. It's creating that journey for the student, for the young person to follow through and to question. You know, we don't allow kids to question a lot. You know, we just kind of tell them how to feel, what to do. They have very little control on their own lives, and sometimes these little things creates that accountability that I was talking about. You know, just, can you help mommy put the shopping away? Or without telling them, but inviting them, which is a very different way of approaching. I like to create a dialogue with the audience as well, because it's so important for me to, as much as I know from research, I learn every single time from the people I encounter, because as much as our perception is, I don't want that perception to be fixed, because things are continuously evolving. So I think if you want to learn more, do come and see my talks and question me after that, you know, grill me after that, because I love that. It's the only way I learn and the only way I can put into research something which is authentic and is impactful. Otherwise, it will be just something I write and end up on a shelf, and it's not useful. So I do want people to come to the talk to take some practical advice and something which they can use, that not only in a classroom but at home with your partner, with your other kids, and in a workplace as well.